Today on Conversations That Convert, we're going to talk about what is the best way to get paid for providing an estimate. And this is part 2 of 3. Let's get started.
Welcome to Conversations That Convert. Every week, we'll spend about 10 to 15 minutes tackling relevant lead generation, marketing, and sales topics for remodelers, home improvement companies, and home builders. Conversations That Convert is brought to you by Builder Lead Converter, your perfect sales assistant. And now, here's Rick and Diana.
Good afternoon, Diana. How are you
Hi,
today?
good afternoon. Hello, how are you today?
Doing fine, thank you. And thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Conversations That Convert. Diana, what are we talking about?
Today, about part 2, what's the best way to get paid for providing an estimate? And indeed, we can be paid for providing an estimate. And this is part 2 out of 3.
That's exactly right. We talked about it on part 1 as to why your leads want to pay you for providing an estimate versus doing it for free. And today we're going to get into more of the nuts and bolts. And this is all part of our series, Builders Ask, what's the best way to? It's directly related to a program that I will be presenting. I have the privilege to present at the International Builders Show in Las Vegas here in 2023. And that's called Bidding Custom Homes and Remodeling Jobs, Turning Estimates into a Revenue Stream. And we will be working off of a case study by an actual builder that earned nearly $60,000 in pre-construction fees, or an average of $4,500 per job in 2022. This same builder is marking up their remodeling jobs 60% and custom homes 30%. And this is pure profit, which is a beautiful thing about the program, is that you can get paid to do things you're already doing on top of the fee that you're charging to manage the remodeling or new home project. So part 1, we discussed how to set the stage with new leads on why they want to pay for estimates. If you explain to me why I want to pay you money, essentially what you're doing is you're showing me the value of what I'm getting in services. And if I think that what you are giving me is more valuable than the money you're asking for, I will say yes. And so that was what part 1 was all about. Part 2, which we'll talk about today, is some different options for how to calculate and sell estimating fees. And then our next episode, part 3, we will be talking about streamlining estimating to become more time efficient to not only cover costs, but also make a profit. So what do you say, Diana? Should we jump in?
I'm so curious about part 2.
Well, part 2, we're going to start with a goal. And that goal is to get incremental commitments from our lead and provide incremental work in exchange for those commitments. So it's great when we actually write the contract and we get the check and financing is closed and we start on the project. But leading up to that, we have to get incremental commitments. Now, in the past, what we have done is we have asked for incremental commitments, such as let's do a site visit or a first meeting. Maybe if you're building a home, it's to pick out a land to build your home on. If you're remodeling the home, you may need to do some sort of concept plans to be able to put together an estimate. So it's all incremental commitments. And oftentimes we've said this is part of the sales process. We will provide the information in order so you can make a well-informed choice. And that's language you definitely want to use, well-informed choice. I didn't say that by mistake. Here, we're switching things up. So what I'm saying, Diana, is, Diana, I would love to remodel your home. I'd love to build your home. This is how our process works. We are going to date before we get married, because once we get married, you're making a big commitment to me. And I want to make sure that you're comfortable with the relationship and the services and expertise I bring to the table. So what do you say we dance first and then maybe hold hands, and then we start that relationship before we actually say the big I do's. And this is all based on establishing value through your process. So the idea is this: if you can give me a small amount of money to then see how I work, and if you value how I'm walking you through our process, providing information that you need, which if we remember, you have two questions. You want to know what your home can look like and how much it will cost. So by walking through that process of answering those two questions, you also are going to find out, do you trust me? Do you enjoy working with me? Are you happy with my level of service, my level of expertise that I bring, based on the project at hand? All of these things are your benefits. So as we go through this process, we tell them why they want to do this, because if they do something like go out and get 3 bids and let 3 people try to fight over buying their project, all of the consequences, negative consequences that come down the road from that. What do you think so far, Diana?
Well, I like the comparison with dating and marriage, and it's more tangible. So now I can see the relationship between the remodeler and the customer. So it's more like a dance, and we are dancing on the floor and see if there is a good fit. And of course, we focus on the process and we explain them the process to see the value. So it's now it's crystal clear and how we establish value. And
the ironic thing is here, we're going to present this program in Las Vegas. And of course, what is Las Vegas known for, right? You go to Las Vegas, you have too much to drink, you get married at one of their 24-hour wedding chapels. And then the next thing you know, you wake up like, what have I done?
Right.
Right? There's no dating. There's no first dance. It's just all right into it. So that's essentially the benefit to you as the lead, the homeowner, or the prospective homeowner. So establishing value through the process, we're going to walk through a couple of steps here. So step 1 is something that we will call the scope and range or feasibility study. The way this works, Diana, is you contact me, I talk to you on the phone, I ask you some qualifying questions. Maybe you ask me some qualifying questions as the builder. We say, hey, you know what? It looks like this is a good fit. What's the next step? Okay, so the next step is we're going to get together face to face. So if it's a new home build, you might be coming to my office. You might be coming to my model home. If it's a remodeling project, I'm going to come out and do a site visit to your home. You're going to show me what you're thinking of. At that point, you are going to ask me, what do you think this is going to cost? And what I will do is I'm going to give you a budget based on previous experience, maybe based on square footage, based on the finish level that you're looking at. But I'm going to give you some sort of a budget range. And that range, as an example here, might, for a $100,000 to $150,000 project, it's approximately a $50,000 range. Now, at that point, I'm going to say that's as best I can do, because in order for me to narrow that budget down, I need to know a lot of different things. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is to pay for 0.25% of the median number of that budget. So in the example we have on the screen here, the budget is $100,000 to $150,000. The median number is $125,000. So you would pay me $312.50 in order to do the following things. I will develop a project scope and specifications, and that's going to detail what you are describing to me. So you have me out to your home, Diana. You said, I want to do this, this, and this. I'm going to write all that down for you. I'm going to detail it out. And the goal of this is that I am going to narrow your budget range by 50%. So now instead of having a $50,000 range in the example we provided, we're going to go down to a $25,000 range, narrowed by 50%. And what I will use is parameters that are based on typical costs. I'm going to use some educated guesswork here, but I'm going to give you enough information, Diana, that you can determine if this project is feasible, and you can move ahead of the project as requested. And here's the language that you want to use. You want to say something like, Diana, if we can get the budget to $125,000 or $115,000, are you prepared to move into, and that would be the next step in your sales process. So it's called a sharp angle close. The reason we are doing this is because we want to get a commitment from the lead to tell us up front, before they've given us any money, if you can hit this budget, we will move ahead to the next step. Now, statistically, from our case study, we know that if we hit the budget, it's almost a 100% conversion to the next step in the sales process. So Diana, what are your thoughts here now? I mean, putting yourself in you've remodeled a couple times, putting yourself in the shoes of the lead. What do you think about this idea of paying to get a higher quality information up front before you make a big commitment?
I think it makes sense, and I can say easily yes. So if you are going to respect my budget and you will give me something in my budget, then of course I can say yes, maybe that's a good fit for me. Yeah.
That's what we're looking for. And of course, I've already laid out the benefits I gave you, Diana. Here's why you want to follow our process,
right?
Because you're going to find out what it's going to look like. You're going to find out how much it's going to cost, and you'll be able to do that before you make the big commitment. So in other words, we will date before we get married. So at this point, if I say, Diana, if we can get the budget to $125,000, are you prepared to move into the proposal preparation agreement? Again, that's a sharp angle close. You say, yeah, if you can hit my budget and I'm happy with the information you're providing, the expertise you bring to the table, I would be prepared to move into the next step. So that's what we're at. That is an incremental commitment based on me doing some incremental work. Now, I'm not going to go back and do any hard estimating of this. Again, like I said before, this is going to be based on typical costs and my educated guess. So it's based on my experience. That step 2, or that next step here, is what we call the proposal preparation agreement. And this will be 1% of the refined budget. So in the example we showed, we narrowed the initial budget by $50,000, or excuse me, $25,000. So now we say we're somewhere between $110,000 and $135,000. And so the refined budget, the median of that would be approximately $122,500. And we would say, okay, to move into the next step, we would require a fee of 1% of that refined budget. So that's going to be roughly $1,250. So you've already paid me $312. You're going to pay me another $1,250, roughly $1,500 here. And what this will do is this will give you the final number. Okay, this will give you everything that you need to know. Now, a couple of things that we need to be aware of here, of what this proposal preparation includes. We'll put together a vendor list for you. We will give you a selection workbook of which you will go do all your selections. So the workbook is available to you. You'll go to my selection centers. If I'm working with a selection coordinator, you'll meet with that person to get all those selections done. We will put together a production schedule based on slot availability. So if I have a slot that's available 6 months from now, I'll put together a production schedule that will start 6 months from now, and then we'll work through to when that project is completed. We will also bring the trades out to visit your home if it's a remodeling project, and or we will get formal estimates from the trades. So we'll have a final plan. They're going to look at everything. Now, this is one thing I want to be very clear on. That money that I'm charging does not include design. There's no design work. So if you're working with an architect, that fee is paid separately. If it's a drafts person that you actually have on staff, they're going to write you a check separately for that based on however you charge for that. So whether it's price per square foot or you're doing it based on style of home or however you charge, that's separate. This is just for compiling these items right here. Now, here's what we go back to the case study. If that final proposal comes within the scope and range budget, it's almost 100% conversion rate. Because what have we done now? Value has been established. If you're bringing expertise to the table, if you trust me, if you are getting all your questions answered, what it's going to look like and how much it's going to cost, if it all falls within your budget, it's almost 100% conversion where they're going to say, okay, let's get married. Because the relationship is established. Now I've removed as many unknowns as possible. There still might be some allowances or some unforeseen circumstances, But I've removed as much of the unknowns as possible. You have the answers to your questions. I've been paid for my process. And the most important thing here I want everyone to realize is that, yes, the getting paid for your time or to offset your expenses to compound this budget is important. But the most important part of this is that you've been able to demonstrate your expertise. So the client believes in you, they see the value of what you're doing, they trust you, and they're ready to move ahead. This also gives you, as the builder, the opportunity to work with the client or prospective client, because it's not a done deal yet. So they may be throwing you red flags. All of a sudden say, Diana, man, you are crazy. I don't want to work with you, right? So you can get to the end, you can say, this is not working out. I'm sorry, but it doesn't make sense for us to do this project. So you can fire them as well as they can fire you. But it's important to understand that if you are over budget, you need to determine why it's over. So perhaps there were some unforeseen circumstances that you ran into. So, building a home, oftentimes we ran into issues where soil problems. So there was an issue there, or there's tree removal, or there's, certain things that you weren't anticipating. Unforeseen circumstances in remodeling happens all the time. Perhaps the lead, they went way over on selections, where you established an allowance for them, based on historical jobs that you've done, and they just went crazy on that. Perhaps there was a material increase during that time where they were doing the selections. Maybe something got missed. But if you can't determine why, it's very difficult to make the sale. So when you put this together, you have to be prepared to understand, what's going on here. If you can determine it, normally you can, of course, get the lead to come back around. Perhaps they increase the budget, or you're going to reduce the scope of work to get them into budget. And per our case study client, what he's telling us is that 15 to 30% of the time, they are going to be high. So every 10 you do, you expect 2 or 3 that will be high. So Diana, okay, you remodeled. We just walked you through this process. I'm really curious to get your feedback. Oh, you're muted, Diana.
I think I'm ready to move forward.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I will send the contract over to you for signature in your authorization right away.
Everything is clear. I can see the visuals, I can see the price, I can see the estimate, so I know what to expect for. So it seems that, yes, I can expect some increase if the materials will be higher, because that's the market right now. Mm-hmm. And of course, if something that I missed, I will let you know.
One thing that this also gives the lead is, if you get to the end and you are not satisfied with me, you can still take all the work that you paid for.
Yeah.
So now you have a plan, you have all the specifications, you have all the work that I've done, you have a schedule, all that. You can take that and you can go walk away and go to another builder and start over. That would obviously be an extreme case, and it would most likely be based on my negligence if you fire me at this point. Because I should have, at this point, I should have done my job to where you see like, wow, this guy's great. I want him to remodel my home or build my home. What's the next step? Let's move forward. Let's get started. I want him to be living in and enjoying my new home. But that's the other thing that you can really relate to the lead is that, look, if you don't like me, you take the stuff and you go someplace else. So very powerful tool. It's good for both. It's good for both. And also at this point, I'm not trying to buy this job. I'm trying to get this job done right. I'm going to try to be as transparent as possible, because I know that relationship at the end of the day, if there's trust established on both sides, then I'm most likely going to have a successful project and have a client that's going to be happy to refer me. Final thoughts, Diana?
Yeah, I think that's, if you focus on the process, I think that's the key. Whatever questions they ask you, just tell them the process. And then I think if you got this, then everything will move forward.
Absolutely. And it's roughly 100% if you hit those numbers and you've done your job. So if you'd like to know more, schedule a strategy call today. Find out how we can help you start profiting from providing estimates. Next week, we will talk about part 3 and hopefully give you some tricks and tips for estimating. But until then, for my brothers and sisters in Christ, may the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all always. We will see you next time on Conversations That Convert.